Friends, we are all in the lockdown period with the infective outbreak of COVID 19, which can be called as corona virus. Nowadays, daily we are hearing the word quarantine, isolation. Now, what are they? What are the legal aspects? Is quarantine legally valid or not? So, this is the topic which I am going to make the video. Yes, previously I told you regarding the Epidemic Diseases Act 1897, where the plague, those days, the plague and smallpox, tuberculosis, and yellow fever were they were causing much havoc, due to which the so-called Epidemic Diseases Act has to be brought into force by the colonial days. Of course, it was amended in 1956 by giving enormous powers to the central government, like the state government, that means the center, can take preventive measures like the transport halt, movement of persons from one place to other, and sending them to quarantine. Right? So now what is quarantine? Let us discuss the origin of the words. So please remember the dictionary meaning. All of you definitely will know that quarantine, it is a state, it is a period where the persons will not be allowed to meet the others, and they will be almost kept in isolation for a period of for a particular period. Normally, that is what you understand by quarantine. What for? This is to see that the infection does not spread from the particular individual to the others. It may be individual, may be a human being, may be an animal also. So actually these quarantine laws, they were in existence right from 1377. The first law on medical isolation, it was called medical isolation, it was passed in the year 1377, when with the onset of plague in the European countries, in the United Kingdom and other countries. Of course, it was all under the control of the United Kingdom. In 1377, the first law was recognized for the isolation. So why the detention? This detention under medical reasons was justified, and any disobedience is definitely made a cognizable offense. Right? At the time, the law prescribed medical isolation for 30 days. It is called Trenito. Trentino. Trenito. The period was 30 days. Trentino. Trentano. Trentino. Right. So subsequently, this particular period was not sufficient. The period of detention has been extended to 40 days. So now the name of Trentino is also changed to the quarantine. Please refer to, these are two, it is Italian word as well as Latin word also. Latin first, let us discuss, because we are concerned with law. So the Latin word quarantine, for quarantine, is quadraginta. Quadraginta, quadraginta, which means 40 days. So the detention for 40 days was necessary at the time. That's why it was called quarantine. Of course, now the period of quarantine is at this particular time. Because of the coronavirus, it is 14 days. It is the quarantine period. Now, in the year 1824, the Supreme Court of United States Chief Justice John Marshall, please remember, he is not Thurgood Marshall, he is John Marshall. Thurgood Marshall is famous for that Plessy versus Ferguson case, civil laws case. Right. Here, John Marshall, he has confirmed that the power of the state to regulate or to enact the laws and regarding the health quarantine. Definitely, previously you may be knowing that USA is the land of liberty. Everybody will claim liberty, and they don't want to be regulated, or they don't want to be confined to one area. But the Supreme Court definitely affirmed the condition or the act that the state is empowered to impose the health regulations. So quarantine is the oldest mechanism to reduce the rapid spread of the so-called infectious disease. So normally the person will be isolated from spreading the bacterial infections and also viral onslaughts. So the travel ban, transport halt, and all these measures they have to be strictly followed. This is the purpose of the quarantine, right? But please remember, there are certain cases where the quarantine, the provision for quarantine is also misused. According to Goa Public Health Act, in the year maybe 1990, before 1990, a person was detained in solitary confinement, and the Bombay High Court held that solitary confinement is against to Article 21, that is life and liberty. But the Goa government pleaded that because of the infectious diseases, because to keep him away from that, he was detained. Of course, it was agreed to by the Bombay High Court lately. Please remember HIV. HIV was detected, you may be knowing, it came from the virus of an animal. So, firstly, a forest affiliate, that means an employee of the Wildlife Federation, he was found with the so-called virus HIV, human immunosymptom, you know it, HIV, and he was kept in quarantine for 60 days and he was made to resign from his job also. Alright, so already I have told you about the Epidemic Diseases Act 1897 and also the amendment subsequent to 1956. Definitely it has given so much of power to the government of India to impose so many laws, right? As far as the COVID-19 is concerned, on March 31st, 2020, the World Health Organization declared it to be a fit case for an international health emergency or world health emergency as per the International Health Regulations 2005. Right. So quarantine, isolation. Definitely it is isolation. Normally we get, they are interchangeable words, quarantine and isolation. What does quarantine means? Quarantine means keeping a person in a separate particular place and seeing that the infection does not spread to the other area. So at that time we do not know, we just suspect that he may be infected with the virus. We do not know whether he is infected with the virus or not. So if it is known that he is infected with the virus, then he will be shifted to the isolation ward. Isolation means totally he will be confined. He will be put in a single room with some ventilation. He will be observed time to time. He will be given the food and he will not be allowed to move from that place to any other place. Even the bathroom will be attached. Of course, so many places are declared as isolation wards. Please remember, so many hospitals, so many hotels, so many dormitories, so many educational institutions where the hostel facility is there, they are deemed to be the quarantine places, whereas isolation is in the hospitals. Now the government of India or the government of any state, they are taking the private hospitals, government hospitals and putting up the isolation rooms. So isolation rooms, there will be the patient will be observed very closely, and if he is positive, the medical treatment will be given. After he is recovered, then he can happily go away. Right. So these are the legal aspects. Now everything under justice, judicial law, everything is amenable to the judicial review, which is the basic structure of the constitution. Basic structure of the constitution, that is rule of law or the so-called judicial review. Yes, it is amenable. So firstly I told you that quarantine rules, they are as per the applicable as per the act, and definitely we have to, they are abiding the constitutional provisions also. Therefore judicial review is also possible. It happened in US. So in what a Chinese citizen, he was actually kept in the quarantine on the outbreak of plague in 1900 itself. Chinese citizen was held captive. He was held in the quarantine cell. But the evidence or the court held that it is based on a religion or a national bias. That means since he is a Chinese man, he was held in the quarantine, and he has to be freed. It happened. Very recently, the Supreme Court also is taking up the COVID-19 matter. In case of prisoners, the Supreme Court may took it on suo motu, that means by itself, and asked the state governments to look into the quarantine for the prisoners, because in India the prisoners occupied 117.6%. That means the facility for the prisons are over occupied. So in Tihar jail, luckily they have taken a protocol that whenever any new inmate has to come, he will be kept in the isolated room or quarantine for a period of 3 days, and then only he will be inside. And in some other jails, Madras I believe, they have put up 2 or 3 isolation rooms in the prisons itself. And ultimately, basing on the directions of the Supreme Court, the accused persons in jails who have committed the offences which are not punishable for more than 7 years, now they are being considered for bail, and most of them, they were given self bail, and they vacated the prisons also, because the reason is the spread of the so-called endemic. We should not spread, because already prisons have been overburdened. We should see already prisoners, who are they are definitely affected with so many illnesses, and so many diseases will be there. So if one person contagious to the other, definitely entire prison will be affected. So therefore, most of them are given bail. I think no cases have been reported from prisons. So friends, this is all regarding the quarantine. Please remember, there is a Latin phrase which means 40 days, quadraginta. So from that this word has come. Anyway, it's only out of interest we are telling. It doesn't make any legally high important words. But anyway, please learn, since it is the time of quarantine or isolation period, please learn to enrich your legal knowledge. Thank you.